Great to see you all. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. As the screen says, Magazines Canada has initiated a new study to help the advertising community better understand how magazines connect with consumers. There we go. Connect with consumers, not just print magazines, but as their various digital extensions as well. With the global and Canadian environments undergoing significant change, we felt it was increasingly important that media agencies, advertisers, as well as magazine media brands understand the impacts that various media channels have in a rapidly evolving consumer path to purchase. Our goal really is very simple. It's to uncover new information that everyone can use to create deeper consumer connections and to create better cross-media efficiencies for advertisers. And so we took a very media-agnostic approach, ensuring a balanced, representative snapshot of today's media realities. After all, when you think about it, magazine content is increasingly distributed across a wide array of media channels, including print, of course, but also web, tablets, mobile, broadcast, social, video, the list goes on. So, do we really care if somebody chooses to read a digital versus a print magazine? The answer is not so much. So, we're truly media companies today. But what pulls the print and digital magazine channels together is wanted content consistently well curated by experts in their editorial genres, beautifully packaged in a focused editorial context. So, now we have this new resource called the Magazine Media Connection Study. We've learned a lot. We hope you will too. It gives us new insight into how and why magazines and other media channels, and I think we've measured 19 of them, I believe, connect together to surround consumers as they move through the path to purchase, how they inform, inspire, and influence consumers throughout the many aspects of their everyday lives. We also learned that no one medium can do it all. I don't think that should come as a surprise. Whether it's magazines, television, web, social, you pick it, there really are no exceptions to this rule. What we do know with this study, though, is that magazines stand out in their ability to connect with readers in a very meaningful and personal way. So, we've got some, I think, some really great information to share with you today. So let's take a look. Let's not wait any longer. I'd like to introduce to you Robert Levy, who is president, and Mark Baltazar, who is vice president of BrandSpark International, the company that took on the task of doing a deep dive into what makes magazine media and all other media tick. You should know that we took a hard look at 3 of Canada's top research consultancies, but BrandSpark set the standard early for smarts, quality, and especially a deep understanding of the Canadian media environment. They were the obvious choice to lead this new study. Both Robin and Mark, they are experienced marketers, researchers, brand innovation strategists, both with the ability to uncover strategic insights that help their clients understand the inner workings of why consumers and shoppers behave the way that they do. They help to take the mystery out of that black box that we all try to demystify every day. So please welcome Mark Levy and Mark Baltazar.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you and to kick this off from our perspective, to kind of step back a little bit and share with you some of the learning we've had over the past 10 years studying the Canadian and global shopper. So what I wanted to share with you are some insights from the BrandSpark annual shopper study. And we now conduct the shopper study, which has reached over 100,000 consumers coast to coast in Canada. It's an annual study connected to the Best New Product Awards, but this is even a subset of our global study, which now reaches over 270,000 shoppers across 12 countries. Because we think it's interesting to see, in terms of the media world, what's happening in other parts of the world in terms of perceptions and reality, and where do Canadians fit into the puzzle. Our study and results are weighted to P&B, again, to create consistency. And you'll see the next few charts representative of the Canadian principal shopper, which is defined as 60% female, 40% male. Again, even in that fact, Canadians are actually quite a bit ahead of most other countries in terms of the role of men in shopping. So again, what was interesting for us in looking at this study and in designing this study in terms of going deeper is BrandSpark has always taken a cross-media approach to our work. Stems back from even when before we were a consulting company, we were actually a branding group inside a major corporation. So we were always looking at multiple media, ROI, effectiveness, and how do we get the best ROI and how do the medias work well together. So again, the results from this study actually are no surprise to us because we've been realizing the role that different media play in the media landscape and how do we keep up with the consumer. Again, for us, it's always about the consumer first. And we've understood the role that magazines play in the path to purchase. And this stems back even to the early days of the IAB when we were involved in creating the CMOST and cross-media studies. And even then, together with online, it was never just about online itself. So again, traditional media, including magazines, are still influential and will become even more influential as we start to experiment with mobile. What's interesting about mobile, I'm also privileged to be the current co-chair of the Canadian Mobile Marketing Association, where we see that mobile, what's different about mobile, and it's on everyone's radar screen, is it really interacts with other media. And this is one of the areas where we believe magazines have a very important role to play, and we're just at the early stages. Early adopters, something we've been tracking for a number of years. Mark will get more into it in the media, cross-media connection study, that early adopters are more likely than other shoppers to learn about new products from magazines. It was one of the early insights that we actually was a little counterintuitive to us. We noticed when we did this study in the early years, we saw that early adopters were over-indexing and reading some of the big established women's general books, which we would not have always thought of being the most innovative or where early adopters would be. But they are, because again, if people are early adopters, they want to know about these new products first. They want to stay on top of trends, and they're the ones who will buy the magazines, will go online and search. So it actually makes sense, and we've seen that now consistently in every country that we've been doing our studies. Established magazine brands are trusted and rank among the top online destinations for specific content. Again, they're not just magazines that you pick up anymore. In the eyes of consumers, they really are brands. And as we start to see these magazines become brands and start to experiment, we can see the results from the consumer perspective. And as I said, the magazines are very well positioned to interact with mobile media. One of the ways we track this is we actually look at, from consumers' point of view, where do they pay attention to advertising? So this is, again, people who use the various media, the percentage that actually say they pay attention to advertising in the different media. And you can see that some of the traditional media not only have reach, but they also have the engagement with advertising. It's where consumers or shoppers are actually used to paying attention. And you can see that TV, direct mail, and magazines are in the top 3, and this can even change where in certain segments magazines will become more important, for example in a segment such as beauty, where there really is specific content that consumers are used to looking at. And you can see again the early adopters over-index even more with certain media, including magazines. When it comes to new products, something that's very important for marketers in terms of how to enter new products and how to launch them and how to break through. Again, we can see that TV and magazines are perceived as the most useful channels outside of retail and sampling to learn about new products. So traditional media or traditional marketing, such as sampling, flyers, direct mail, continue to be very effective with consumers. We've actually been doing a lot of talking about the flyer, for example, and the future of the flyer. There's a lot of interest around that. But for the moment, again, consumers are still using traditional media in terms of how to learn about new products as well as new media. Again, even more for the early adopters. Flyers are interesting just by way of example. in the general concept of, is print going away in all aspects and being replaced by digital? Often we heard a number of years ago, whether it was the flyer or newspapers or magazines, that everything was going to become digital. While digital has made inroads, even where consumers have a very easy choice to be completely digital, something like flyers, they continue to choose to rely on the traditional media of print, much to the chagrin of many retailers and marketers. But we actually realize that the current flyer, just like newspapers, magazines, as they reinvent themselves perhaps, will continue to have a role. One of the ways that we look at media, which is a little bit different, is we've asked consumers over a number of years, how do they consume media? Do they consume it the same way, or do they consume it differently? Often people talk about engagement or different kinds of terms. And so we've had this scoring for a number of years where we give consumers the choice to say, are you consuming magazines more for entertainment? It's on the left side of the line. Or are you consuming, when you read a magazine, are you looking more for information? So you can see magazines are to the left of the line. Newspapers are on the actual other extreme, that it's really mostly for information, which is why it's relatively easier to substitute, for example, online for a newspaper, unless there's another way that newspapers are being consumed. Television is more on the entertainment scale. Radio is a little bit on the entertainment scale between television and magazines. And the internet has been moving. It was actually started out, it's the one that's moved the most. It's actually started out more on the information side and has been moving steadily towards the middle as people are using YouTube and doing all sorts of things with video, etc. We're seeing that the internet is moving towards the middle. So again, for us, when we look at this, we say, cross-media and multiple media approach to different campaigns still makes sense in terms of what are the consumers doing, what's your target doing, and they're obviously consuming media differently. What's interesting about magazines and internet are the ones that are most in the middle, in that they have both information capabilities and they have entertainment capability. We see it, for example, in terms of the discussion around, are magazines more than just the magazines? Are they a brand? One of the ways we believe they're a brand is looking at the answer to this question, where we had an open-ended question in our survey asking consumers to tell us their favorite websites. So they had nothing to do with print, nothing to do with magazine. What are their favorite websites? And these were open-ended responses that we then coded. And these were the different categories. And again, what we've identified are all the spots where actually magazine brands came up spontaneously to an online digital question. For any of you that are interested in understanding more about this slide, we're happy to share also which are the titles and which are these brands that are sitting there in very strong positions. And we also believe that magazines are well positioned to bridge the gap from print to digital, following up on that. In terms of, for example, QR codes, still this whole area of how to get consumers to interact with mobile technology is evolving, and again, some people are doing it well, some people are not doing it that well. You have to think of it making it easy for the consumer and adding value, so when they actually spend some time, they're going to get something out of it. For the moment, in fact, people are most often scanning QR codes when they're sitting with a magazine. It makes sense. You have a little bit of more time, you're engaged with the subject matter, that's an opportunity. And we're starting to see some brands also, whether it's evolving on a tablet, making the experience engaging. We're also starting to see now the different media working together with mobile. So here's an example of a transit shelter campaign going on in Toronto right now. It's one of the first ever virtual stores that P&G has done with Walmart, in this case actually featuring the Best New Product Award winners, where you can scan and get these products delivered to home. What's interesting, if you look at the tagline, shop the best new products from the best place possible, home, well, you could just imagine this being a magazine ad, because you're at home, you're relaxed, you want to buy some things, there's a special offer or whatever, you now have the convenience of just scanning it at home, it gets delivered, done. Even more convenient, I think, than when you're standing, but I guess while you're standing waiting for a bus or a streetcar as well. We're also starting to see magazine brands evolve. This is an example from the US. Again, using the Best New Product Awards with Better Homes as an example, where they actually engaged bloggers, sent them products that had won a Best New Product Awards, got them to blog on digital media, and they were so excited to be working with a trusted brand such as Better Homes and Gardens. Then they turned it into a magazine feature, so this was actually the magazine advertorial that ran after just capturing what the bloggers had done. So again, a great integration of leveraging social online and creating a link with advocates, which Mark is going to talk a little bit about later. So we think we're just at the beginning. Again, there are some wonderful magazine apps, again, that Mark was sharing with me, where you can start to really see the benefits of interacting with the brand, both in print, but also along different ways, getting closer to the path to purchase. So just wanted to spend a few minutes with you sharing, again, some of our perspective from our kind of ongoing shopper studies that go on independent of this study and also globally, to say that really the results we've seen here, it gave us an opportunity to take our understanding but now go deeper, and Mark's now going to share with you the results from that deeper media connection study. So thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Glad to see a number of you in the room, and yeah, really excited to share some of this exciting information that we have here. And as Robert and Gary mentioned, it's a unique opportunity for us, because we're able to share this proprietary study. Often the work that we do with clients we're not able to share to the public, but in this case we are. Fortunately enough, we do have the Brand Spark Shopper study that Robert shared with the group that we are able to share. So really excited, as there's some really interesting information coming out of the Media Connection study that we collaborated with Magazines Canada on. And we started this journey it was 2012, towards the end of 2012, so it's been a number of months, and purposely it was a long period of time, because we really wanted to do it right, and we didn't want to leave any stone unturned, as it's a big issue, media and how media works, and how media works to influence how consumers think, how they behave, and there's a lot of money invested in media in general. So we wanted to make sure that we were doing a thorough job. The study, the process, and again, kind of why we embarked on this journey, really, we really wanted to answer 4 questions. And the first one is we wanted to understand who each media channel is connecting with. Beyond demographics, so we all have demographic information. Everyone has, age, gender, etc. We all have that information. There's ample kind of sources of information on specifically demographics. But we wanted to go beyond demographics, and start talking about and start seeing, specifically segments that advertisers and marketers are going after. So early adopters, influencers, and advocates, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Which channels are best able to connect with those important consumers? And as Gary mentioned, and as Robert mentioned as well, we wanted to make sure that this was a media neutral study. So we looked at all channels, because again, we'd be foolish to think that it's just one channel that's going to power our brands. It's an omni-channel world, as we all know, and that's the lens that we wanted to take, and we did take. The second question that we strive to answer was how each channel connects with consumers. So we understand the who, and now it's the how. And the how goes beyond time spent, the reach of each channel, and the frequency of each channel. We have a lot of information on those metrics as well, but we wanted to figure out how is each channel connecting with the consumer at a deeper level, at an emotional level. And so we set out to do that as well, because the hypothesis that drove that question was that if we can better understand how channels and the content being delivered through these media channels are connecting with consumers, then we're better able to cater our advertising or cater a certain channel to work more effectively and efficiently in our campaigns. The third question, now this gets into kind of the path to purchase component. Once we understood kind of who we're reaching, the specific emotional connections that each channel has with consumers, how is each channel impacting consumers along the path to purchase? And we used a straightforward framework in this case, consideration. So what channels work best at getting brands into the consideration set? What channels work best at helping consumers during the evaluation stage? So, Once they have a series of brands in their mind that they may purchase, then consumers are starting to look at, okay, now which one is best for me? So there's a little bit of research going on. So which channels help with that? And then of course purchase. And how does media work throughout those three stages of the path of purchase? And then the fourth question, aside from all the other channels, what's the role of magazines? And how does magazines fit into the path of purchase? How do magazines work synergistically with other channels? And how can we leverage this channel more efficiently? Okay. So as I mentioned, this was again a process that went over a number of months. We didn't want to leave any stone unturned. And so I'll give you a quick idea of the process that we went through. So before speaking to consumers, we wanted to talk to the industry. Specifically media planning agencies in Canada. So we spoke to a number of the top executives at media planning agencies in Canada, as well as some marketers. So we had some roundtables, we had one-on-one interviews, and the purpose of that was really to get the perspective of what's on their mind, what's on your mind. What questions do you have about media? What questions do you have about magazines? What are your worries? What keeps you up at night? So we wanted to make sure that we had that before going in to develop the study, to make sure that we're capturing all stakeholders' hypotheses and questions going through the process. Before going to, where I'm going to end with this is there's a large quantitative study where I'm going to spend most of my time. But before getting to this quantitative study, we wanted to make sure again that we were designing the right study and measuring the right things and using the right frameworks. So before going forward with the development of a large quantitative study, we had some qualitative interviews with consumers and leveraged BrandSpark's ChatSpark qualitative exploration techniques to talk to consumers in three categories. So we focused on auto, beauty, and the food category, so consumer packaged goods, food, and to try to understand how do they use media channels. What do they see as influencing their purchase behavior or even just perceptions? And we wanted to make sure that we had an understanding using the right language before moving forward. And then the last stage, where I'm going to spend most of my time today, was the quantitative path to purchase study, which is a fairly robust quantitative study. In total, we spoke to 3,000 Canadians. And as Gary mentioned, we wanted to make sure that we weren't biasing the methodology towards any one specific channel, right? So we made sure that we had users of all the major media channels. In total, we measured 19 sources of information, and sources of information being, so that include paid advertising channels, that's friends and family, so word of mouth, and in store we measure that as well. So we really wanted to take a holistic view to make sure that we knew and we generated insights on all aspects of influence. And as I mentioned, the three categories that we measured were auto, beauty, and food. So let's start off with who each channel is connecting with. And again, this goes, as I mentioned, beyond demographics, because we have that information in spades. And so the first thing we wanted to do is look at this early adopter segmentation that Robert referred to earlier. And early adopters, and we've been measuring this for 10 or so years now, and with very consistent results, and we have a good understanding of the early adopters. And early adopter is someone who actively seeks out new products. Now, an early adopter changes by category. So some of you may be an early adopter in tech, or some of you may be foodies or fashionistas or beauty early adopters. So depending on the category, the early adopter does change. So we wanted to make sure that in the study because it's important for yourselves as marketers and agencies to build campaigns and reach and resonate with these consumers. Because if you can hit them within the first 6 months of a product launch and you can do a good job with the early adopters, and typically that's in at the end of year one and going to year two, that product will at least hit some successful thresholds. So it's critical at the outset to reach that basic consumer. The second group that we look at, and there is some overlap, but they are slightly different, are the influencers. Now these are people, and you know these people, maybe you, depending on the category. These are people that you ask for information about. So your friends or family. They're experts in a specific category. They provide advice. They have a lot of information. They read a lot about certain product categories. So it's important to also when developing campaigns, that you're reaching this consumer as well, because they're more likely to spread positive word of mouth. And so it amplifies the effects of your media investment. So it generates some greater ROI if you can reach not only your early adopters, but also connect with influencers as well of your category. Again, it changes by category. So in terms of what we found was that magazines, and this is both, and so we split out magazines in a number of different ways, print and digital. We also looked at magazine apps, editorial, etc., which I'll get into a little bit later. But what we found right away was that magazines, print and digital, over-indexed amongst these segments. So they're better channels to reach the early adopters and reach the influencers. And now, as Robert mentioned, we've been seeing this, ever since we started the early adopter segmentation and created segmentation and been tracking media. So it wasn't a surprise to us that these channels did rise to the top in terms of being able to efficiently reach the early adopters and influencers. And these people are the advocates. So these are your brand advocates, essentially. And why they're important is because they do amplify your media investment. If you can hit them, you're not only communicating to them, but you're communicating to their friends and family, because they're going to be more likely, or they're very likely than most, to go talk about a brand, talk about a specific product. They would prefer to actually recommend a specific brand versus just kind of a product in general. Some recent research coming out of the University of Rhode Island. They did a big study on advocates and the role of advocates and kind of what they mean to marketing. Is not only are they more likely to be active on social media, and they're very active on social media, but they're more likely than anyone else to grow their network. So they're active on social media, not only to talk to their own friends and family, but they like to talk to other people as well. And in fact, they're more likely than anyone else to spread positive word of mouth about a brand or a product experience that they've had to people outside of their circle. So they truly are amplifiers of media investment. And so important to be able to reach them and communicate with them through your campaigns. The next question that we aim to answer and address was, how is each channel connecting with consumers? So again, this goes beyond the time spent, the reach and frequency, and really looks at how does each channel connect emotionally to consumers, knowing that if we can connect emotionally with consumers, and they'll be more receptive to advertising in that channel, and if they're more receptive to advertising in that channel, then more likely to be persuaded to think the way we want them to think, or behave the way we want them to behave, and essentially kind of purchase our products or services. So to do that, we created what's called a media connectivity model. And essentially there's 3 stages and 3 components to this media connectivity model that help us kind of describe this connection that consumers have. The first stage, or the first component of media connections, or connections that media channels have with consumers, is relationship. And relationship is essentially, how engaged are consumers with a specific channel and its content. When they spend time with each of these channels, do they feel that it's time well spent? So, is it just a waste of time, or they actually, do they feel inspired? Is it time well spent? So the time value for consumers is important in this aspect. And relationship is also about trust, right? So do they trust the information or content, it can be advertising, whatever it may be, coming from that channel? And there's big differences, as we'll see, by channel. The second component of this media connectivity model is receptivity. So yes, you can have trust, and there's engagement, and there's, you feel good about spending time with each channel, but how open are they to the content, to the advertising within each channel? So how receptive are they to any communication coming from that specific channel? So that's an important part of this relationship with media. And of course, leading to the third component is persuasion. So how persuasive is the content or advertising in these channels to get someone to think the way you want them to think, and behave the way you want them to behave? So we'll first start off with the 3 traditional channels. So we'll look at magazine print, general online, so general websites, so outside of magazine websites, and then TV along these metrics. So for each of these components of the media connectivity model, we had a number of different metrics that kind of laddered up or created these these factors, I guess you could say. But these ones here are the top kind of contributing ones. So the first one, feeling engaged. How engaged does someone feel with each of these channels? Then we'll look at has my full attention, how relevant ads are, or how relevant do consumers perceive the ads from these channels, and then do people feel that advertising in these channels are a good part of the experience? So in terms of engagement, versus online and TV, magazines has a slight edge, very close with TV. So consistent with TV, maybe a little bit stronger, definitely stronger than online in terms of engagement. And we've seen this before. When spending time with a magazine, you're less likely to be multitasking and you're much more focused on the task at hand, which leads to a channel that has my full attention. So we start to see a gap starting to be created between magazines, definitely with online, TV as well. The gap starts to widen as you move closer to persuasion and actual purchase. And then in terms of relevancy of the ads, so in magazines versus online specifically, consumers perceive that the ads are much more relevant. And I have an audio clip which I'll share with you in a second from our ChatSpark interviews that talks to that, an actual consumer clip. And it's because, and the reason why the relevancy scores are higher is because it's perceived to be in context. So consumers perceive that the ads within magazines are related to the content that surrounds it. So they're much more open to, and it's almost advertised as almost an extension. In fact, most consumers believe that it's part of the content. They do see it as advertising, but it's connected with the surrounding content. And so that's why relevance increases. And then ads are a good part of the experience. You can see, again, the gap continues to widen with online as you get closer to purchase. So I'll play a clip now. This is about a minute and a half audio clip from an interview that we conducted with one consumer. So we conducted 15 interviews across the country. This is just one clip that speaks to this dynamic that we're seeing here amongst the 3,000 people that we interviewed.
No, it's part of the magazine. Sometimes they can be entertaining. I don't find them too much of a hassle or anything. I just think it's part of the overall experience of the magazine. Sometimes they're useful. Well, in terms of like the recipes or the coupons or just finding out about something new, getting a new idea, that kind of thing. And I think they're better than TV commercials. Probably less intrusive. They're just kind of there. You can look at them or not as much as you want to while you're looking at the magazine. Or sometimes they complement what you're reading in the magazine. They might be on the same theme. Like if you're in the food section, the ad might be for some kind of food, so it might be kind of relevant. Whereas TV is just kind of random. Online, I think, is more of a pain and more of a distraction. You're just trying to get rid of them, get them out of the way to get wherever you're going. I don't really enjoy online ads as much or find them as useful. Because sometimes an online ad might be a pop-up or something that's like coming right across what you're doing and you have to like close it down or get rid of it. Or it's something that's like flashing on your screen. It's taking your attention away from what you're doing. But I feel like the ads kind of fit more in with what you're reading in the magazine. They might be along the same theme or less distracting. They're there. You can look at them if they catch your eye or not if they're not something you're not interested in.
Okay, so just kind of wraps up what we've been seeing. So we heard that, and we wanted to make sure that, well, we heard it from a number of consumers, and then we tested that quantitatively and saw the same thing when we interviewed 3,000 people, as I showed in the previous chart. So that's print aspect, but of course there's the digital side of magazines, and so we took a deeper look at that as well. So along the same continuum, we now wanted to look at digital magazines. So digital magazines in this case could be websites or apps. So it's kind of really the grouping. We do split it out, and I'll show you some insights when you split out magazine websites and also magazine apps. But what we wanted to do is compare digital magazines to online video and then compare it to social media as well. And so what we saw in terms of engagement, so digital magazines are perceived to be more engaging than online video. Social media, of the three channels that we looked at, is the most engaging, where people are kind of more, more into the experience. But this is not about advertising. This is about connecting with their friends and family, as we'll see when we get to the advertising specific metrics. Has my full attention. So this is where you see now, again, the focus when people are spending time with magazines, that the quality of that impression starts to play out here. And so people are much more focused when spending time with magazines, less distracted. They're multitasking much less. And in terms of relevancy of ads, so we now start to see that magazine ads are perceived to be more relevant by consumers. Again, kind of going back to this clip that I just showed you, or just that you just heard. Now this is digital, so it really kind of talks to the overall kind of brand halo that the magazine has, kind of in print and also in digital. And then just in terms of ads as being a good part of the experience, people like ads. People like the ads, or just advertising in general, more so in magazines than in online video or social media. Building upon kind of this digital story, the other hypothesis or question that we had is, as people spend time with digital, are they becoming more engaged? Like, are we, as advertisers, are we able to connect with them a little bit better? Can we persuade people that are spending more time with our digital properties, whether it's magazines, with their websites or apps? And we show that that's true. So as people spend more time with the digital properties, they become more engaged with the brand, so the magazine brand, and more engaged with the content, making it kind of much easier for us to persuade them to, again, I think the way we want to think and behave the way we want them to behave. And there's some exciting things happening in the digital space for magazines. I have a quick example of a magazine app which shows the power of the print side of it. So again, the content, and then of course the innovativeness of the digital side, and bringing those two together to really create an experience for consumers that connect with them at a deeper level. Has anyone seen this before? Is this new? So you can see, this is an auto magazine out of Europe, and this was an advertisement for auto insurance, and just the playful nature, really taking advantage of the medium to engage with the consumer a little bit more. Now, so this is just the tip of the iceberg, with the digital side of magazines and apps, and really combine the power of both, the brand side, the content side of print, and bring it together with digital. So the third question, as I referred to earlier, that we wanted to answer, was what is the role of again, media, again, all channels, along the path to purchase. And to do this, we wanted to focus on three specific categories to get a little bit more granular, to get a little bit more in depth. And so again, beauty, auto, and food we focused on, and all channels. So it wasn't just magazines. We looked at all channels, as you'll see, and then really how do magazines play within that space, and how can we leverage it and generate the synergies that it has, or take advantage of the synergies that it has. And so the model that we looked at, and I referred to it a little bit earlier, was a fairly straightforward framework for this in this study. Our path to purchase framework consisted of three stages. So number one, the first stage, consideration. So this is where brands get into the consideration set, where awareness is starting to be built if consumers aren't aware of the brand previously. It's really answering the question for consumers, what's available in the category that I'm about to purchase in, or I'm interested in. The second stage is evaluation. So now I have a bunch of options. I have a bunch of brands that I'm aware of that could meet my needs. Now I want to get a little bit more specific, and I want to determine what's better. So more comparison happening, more research happening here. Now, depending on the category, this stage could, this could be, 3 to 6 months. In automotive, for beauty, it could be a day, it could be a week. It could be talking to a friend for 5 minutes, right? So depending on the category, the length of these stages do vary. For food, it may be very quick. It could be, seeing an ad, okay, in my consideration set, on my list, go to the store and buy. So it really depends. And then the third stage, of course, is, answering the question, what is right for me? What am I going to purchase? And it's essentially the purchase stage of the process.